Coach Deborah has a passion and purpose to assist young. Coach Deborah has a passion and purpose to assist young men, ages 15 to 24, to overcome obstacles and build their best lives. She wants to see every young man live out their potential. She has a master's degree in human services counseling, with a major in life coaching. More importantly, she is the mother of 3 boys, who are exceptional, educated, professional men. Coach Deborah believes it is better to train early, rather than need to fix later. She utilizes basic principles and God-led concepts. Sometimes the only thing a young man has is their credibility or their name. The actions they take are based on the decisions they make. Those decisions align with their choices and result in consequences. Coach Deborah can assist you if you are lost, floundering, or confused. Embrace the help and start building your best life today.
Hey, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Build Your Best Life, Coach Deborah Smith. And we're going to be doing the conversation with the guys like we always do on every second Saturday. How you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Good. So we have Deacon Dan Smith. We got Elder Joseph Levette.
Great morning.
And Mr. Coach Ricardo Miller. How y'all guys doing, man?
Ready for a great conversation.
Y'all ready for a great conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I miss talking to you guys. Love you guys. And we're going to get right into it. And let me tell you this, man. What we're getting ready to discuss today is very, very important and something that, needs to be said. And I'm sure, this type of discussion is going on all around the world because of what's going on today. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what the topic is, and then we'll go from there. Son, you hear siren and see flashing lights. What's next? And all of this is stemming from, not just Tyree Nichols, but other blacks, young men that has been going through a whole lot with police brutality. And this is not nothing new. This is something that's been going on for ages. But it's just getting to the point now, it's just so out of control, and it's coming to the forefront, and we're seeing everything. Back then, they didn't have that type of, equipment and stuff like that, where we could see everything that was going on. It was going on, but we didn't notice. But now it's right in front of the world, and we're going to get in and we're going to discuss it. But before we do that, though, I'm going to, turn it over to these guys here. And if you guys want to say a couple of things before we get into the conversation, you can. We're going to start off with Coach Ricardo Miller.
Hey, I'm excited about this conversation because I think I have sort of maybe a different view on the subject matter. And so I might be pushing the envelope. And so y'all don't throw me under the bus when I'm done. Pray for me. And we're going to really, I believe ultimately the conversation today is going to help bring an understanding to a lot of people, because as I was looking at the questions, I thought about it, all of us have unique views of how to respond in regards to the questions, but also understanding what we're seeing, what's happening in our world. So I'm glad to be a part of today's talk.
Okay, thank you for that. And what about you, Deacon Dan Smith? Anything you want to add before we get into the conversation?
Well, I'm unique to this because I'm both sides.
Right.
Experiencing both sides and what's going on. So yes, I'm ready for this conversation. I have some things I love to share, and I can I have a whole lot of opinions.
Okay. All right. What about you, Elder Joseph Levette?
I think what's going to take place tonight, you're going to hear some individual perspectives. And then I think collectively, you're going to see that we really, in some ways, are going to be saying the same things, but in different ways that people like kids, young men, they can identify with one of them. They should be able to identify with one perspective. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great. I'm excited. Let's get it.
All right, let's go ahead and get into it then. Okay, police brutality beat Rodney King on April 29, 1991. Almost 31 years later, there hasn't been any kind of positive change. And on January 27, 2023, Tyree Nichols was beaten so brutally by a law enforcement officer that he died from his injuries. And, you know, that's sad. That is sad. And, you know, what can you really say about that? What can you say about that? So we're going to go ahead and dive into the questions, and then we're going to, you know, we'll go through it, and then we'll see what kind of, you know, answers that we can probably come up with that can help single parents, or even, you know, parents that, you know, that have two parents in the house, you know, with their sons and daughters when it comes to, you know, the police brutality and what to do if they're being stopped, you know, by police or something like that, you know, and we, you know, we'll definitely do that. So my first question is this. Sadly, there hasn't been a positive change in over 31 years. What do you attribute to the lack of the social change? And I'm going to go ahead and start with Coach Ricardo Miller, because he said he had a whole lot of different perspectives on things, especially on the question. This may be one that he may have. So I'm going to start with you. So, Ricardo Miller.
Well, one, I agreed with the questions because I thought they would really provoke persons to take some time to listen to what we're about to say, because I believe there are a lot of people who would agree with the question that says there hasn't been any change in some 31 years. I don't agree with that. I don't agree that there hasn't been change. I think there has been change. I think, unfortunately, we do have this problem that is constantly revealing that police brutality is a real thing. Right. But I don't believe police brutality 31 years ago and today is the same. And I'm going to give you an example. I stayed in New York in 96, and where we stayed, me and my friends, we were troublemakers, 90, 94, 95, around that time. And every time we went out at night, we were pulled over or we were harassed by police officers, okay? And then fast forward to 2010, when I pimped my ride and put some 24s on my car, I can remember being pulled over profiling. I remember just because, and I had to, you know, made sure I kept a Bible in my seat or on the dashboard to say I'm, you know, my ride may look a little street, but, you know, I love the Lord. And so I remember having seen that, and then maybe moving on to 2020 and then watching and seeing, and then obviously eventually I married a police officer. And then seeing and hearing and learning about how and what's happening in that space, I believe that there has been change. I believe that there will always need to be change. So when I think about this question about social change, I think when you bring different people together, you're going to always have some level of conflict. I think human beings in their natural makeup, we call it the sin nature, breeds problems. And so when we look at the truth of the matter is, when you shine a light bright on the educational system, there are some bad teachers. When you shine the light bright on some churches, there are some corrupt preachers. When you shine the light on the legal system, there are some underground attorneys, bad attorneys. When you shine the light on the law enforcement, you would have discovered that there are also bad police officers. And you can go through all professions. The unique position we find ourselves in today is that when you're caught, it is highlighted much faster than in times past. And so everybody gets to know much faster. And so I think the news and the attention for brutality during Rodney King time, it was when it recording started to make itself more available. Now we hear every year one or two incidents on a very large level, but be rest assured, I've lived 47 years as a Black man. I've lived 20 plus years in the United States, and I've seen all kinds of bad behavior from law enforcement. And I must say, not because I'm married to a police officer, right? But I must say, I've seen improvement. Now, is there room for improvement? Of course. but I have also seen improvement. And so I'm going to say this and I'm done. When you think about, and I use this example, you put 1,000 different ethnicity of men and you divide them up into groups and you put them in a prison, you put them in one spot. Guess what they're going to do? One of the first things they're going to do, they're going to huddle to their liking or their set group. The Asians are going to huddle in the Asian. The blacks are going to huddle with the blacks. The whites are going to huddle with the blacks. That's human nature. Now the warden and the cell block managers are going to have to teach integration. They're going to have to help them to understand y'all in here for a year, 3 years, 5 years, and you're going to have to learn how to get along. Now, if you have a black warden, you could have behavior that lean towards favoritism for blacks. If you have a white warden, you can have favoritism that leans towards that of our Caucasian brothers and sisters. If you have that of a Hispanic warden. And so I believe when we start to think about bad behavior, I don't think it's just bad behavior from an ethnicity standpoint, nor is it just from a belief standpoint in that of a career. I think it's general, but then I think there's room for improvement.
Okay, so individuality.
Yeah.
You know, depending on the person.
Yes, and so here's the deal. I believe based on Mr. Nichols, had those been white officers, it would have been a whole different kind of ruckus in this country. Police brutality has always been real.
Right.
I promise you this, and I'm gonna say this, and some people are gonna be mad at me, but I promise you they did turn it down in this country because they were upset that it was police, but it didn't get as lit, and the streets didn't get as ruckus because they weren't actually white police officers. So this was a police brutality issue and not necessarily so much a racist issue. And so obviously the streets didn't find itself being what it was in a number of other situations. I'm done.
Just like it was with what's the young man's name? That's terrible. The last person that
George Floyd.
Yeah, George Floyd. Just like George Floyd. When it happened to George Floyd, everybody, every city, they were out there in the streets. They were doing all kinds of stuff. They were burning things down. They were, really, really, going off and stuff like that. And you're right. They didn't do that in this case, in this instance. So you're right. Okay, Deacon Dan, what you got to say about it?
Well, I saw going on some of the information that Coach Ricardo shared with us. But I look at it like this. I'm going to get a bunch of apples, okay? I got some good ones, and I got some bad ones. Now, I got some that might be going bad, but then where I could just throw them out yet. It's still usable. And this is what's happening with some of our officers. You got great officers, and then you got them bad ones. And what are you doing now is you don't have as many I would say persons or they're trying to go into law enforcement, and they're recruiting a lot of bad apples where previous law enforcement in other areas. And I think now is the way this done come about. I think they're finna make some changes. Well, all I'm saying is you got them bad apples. You got to learn how to weed them bad apples out. Yeah. And sometimes I always ask the question, why don't they do some scenarios in training? Bring in somebody unknown to push a guy and see how far he'll go. Don't wait. I'd rather wait until they almost to the end of the class and they figure like they done made it, but push them and determine what, how would they react in this situation or that situation? Because being out there for 40 years, I done seen some bad apples, some really bad apples. And the reason why, like Okay, like this thing here, when we had it was police brutality. It wasn't a race thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the parents asked for, do not go and riot or anything like that. But you got to look at those bad apples. I think it got to do a whole lot of training. It got to do. I know we have scenarios where we do shootings and stuff like that, and but I think you need to have those scenarios where you actually got somebody that's, I'm gonna be like it is, undercover. See how far you can push a guy. These officers that are coming in the street today. Now, I had some of them with some of their training officers. They really saw into the guy, and they had enough decency in them to say, "Oh no, this guy ain't gonna make it." The field training officer has the right to say, "Hey, no, we don't need this guy in our department."
Yeah.
But you got some of them that might want to let some of them pass. But I done seen where you had a white and you had black field officer, training officer. Both of them get the same report. This guy can't come with us.
Yeah.
He has the wrong attitude. Yeah. So, but that's what I'm thinking. You got them bad apples. You're going to have them bad apples.
Yeah.
But how do you pick them out?
Okay.
When
yeah.
For me, I looked at this question really hard, and one thing that came to mind with me was mindset. It is a mindset in all aspects of the brutality. There's a mindset of the officers that bring about brutality, and then there's a mindset in the young man that usually causes that to happen. To them. And when I say it's mindset, because this case here with Nichols proved that it's a lot mindset, more so than it is a race problem. Because if you got, like Deacon Dan was saying, if you got some cops that's bad apples, it's their mindset. It's not that they were taught to be brutal like that, because they're not taught that. Deacon Dan did this for 40 years. He can tell you, you're not taught to be brutal. You're not taught to do excessive force. You're actually taught what excessive force is. So anyone that do that, they develop the mindset to do that. It's just like on the other flip side of that is you got a young man who don't comply sometime, and they're gonna cuss back at him, and they're gonna challenge that officer's manhood or whatever you want to call it. And that officer gotta, they, instead of them refraining and practicing some self-control, they allowed their mindset, oh no, you're not gonna disrespect me. And so they carry that over from a personal standpoint rather than staying in their professional mode. And if they stay in their professional mode, because the mindset of an officer first going in is that you always maintain your professionalism. Your job, they teach it all day long: protect, defend, protect and defend, serve, protect and defend. They teach those things all the time. So anything that's done outside of that is a mindset. So that's why I wanted to throw that term out there, that it being a mindset.
Okay.
Can I say something in conjunction with the mindset element? And I totally agree with the mindset. The challenge is, even after you have an appropriate mindset that is centered around the training, we have these elements that are going back to mindset. We're going back to, like I heard you said this, man, you ain't going to disrespect me.
Right.
Now, all of us have variables as to what disrespect is.
Right.
Let me tell you something. I got thrown out of a class in the Bahamas. I'll talk more about this probably a little bit later in a couple of questions. But I got thrown out of a class in the Bahamas because in our culture, it's extremely disrespectful when you says, Ella Levette, you asked me a question. Hey, Ricardo Miller, I need you to get, and I said, what? And he said, what'd you just say to me? I said, what? You what me? Get out of my class. What do you mean? I just said what? Disrespectful joker, get out of my class. And so when I came to the States as a children's pastor, well, you know, all children aren't equally trained. So when a kid walk up in kids' church and they say, "What?" I'm thinking, and I had to tone it down. I had to remind myself I ain't in the Bahamas, and this is our church. I'm just saying, because the trigger factor, so there's a trigger because of cultural practice. So somebody calls you a name, somebody does certain things to you, the trigger, your mama. Every training, now I love what Deacon Dan says. You got to push that person in training to learn how to live beyond their triggers, to have a higher level mindset. So I just have to reinforce and further support what both of you said. Pushing them in training and establishing, you may have a mindset and a trigger that can actually feed into you suppressing what you were trained and now getting into your feelings. And Houston, we got a problem.
Right. And you know what? I agree with that, because not only in law enforcement, but in life, period, you know, and everything that you do, even in, like you say, in school, in church, even at home. What you said resonated with me, because I know when I was young with my grandfather, you couldn't say certain words because it sounded too much like another word to him. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my grandfather, old school. You couldn't say shoot because it sounded too much like the other word. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You know, I would say, you know, forget that. He'll be like, do what? And I'm like, you know, I didn't think I said anything wrong. Right. But it's the upbringing, you know, and the trigger, like you say, the trigger that makes people, you know, jump or react to something, you know. And then I think it's more so with law enforcement, because a lot of times they done been through so much with so many different people, different personalities. And a lot of times, you know, after a while, they get tired of it. So any little thing that you say may trigger them quickly, you know. So that's, you know, that's how I feel about it, because I've had run-ins with law enforcement, and, you know, and I was very, very polite, and they still, you know, treated me like, you know, hey. So it really depends on the person, and depends on, you know, who's wearing that badge and how they're feeling that day, you know. So I understand where you're saying, you know, where you're going with that, Coach Miller. So I'm gonna go to the next question. The next question is second-degree murder charges and other offenses. Do you think charges should be filed against the EMT because of the lack of providing Nichols with medical assistance? And I'm gonna start with you, Elder Levette.
Well, actually, being a former EMT, I'm going to answer that question directly. Absolutely. They should be. As an EMT, you have a duty to act and provide care. Irregardless of what the circumstances are, I don't care if that person was wrong as two left shoes. You have a duty. You have a duty to act and to take care of that, because they are a patient. To you, they are not a criminal. They're not a suspect. They're none of that. They are a patient. So when you come on the scene, as an EMT, when I was EMT, and I was a flight medic in the Army, so when I get on the scene, if anything going on, that's beyond me. I don't care. I've been on scene when they got a guy handcuffed, and I tell them, you know, uncuff him. I need to treat him. I can't treat him with his hands behind his back and he can't breathe. So, you know, absolutely, you have a duty to act separate of what law enforcement. You can't engage in what the law enforcement, because that's what I feel happened in that case. They kind of got influenced by what was going on from the law enforcement officers, that they failed to act accordingly. And so, yes, they should be held accountable.
Okay. All right, Deacon Dan Smith.
I agree with the Elder Levette, because, you know, as a first responder, you come up with somebody injured, your first thing is to treat them to your ability to get them stable. Then they move on to the EMTs. EMTs get them stable where they'll get, you know, further examination, and they move on to the doctors. Oh yeah, it should be some type of punishment, some kind of charges filed against them, because that's not kosher. That's not an EMT. That's not your profession. Even though the officers has done, might say, okay, wait, this guy gonna give you all a hard time, so we're gonna keep pursuing the issue. That's not right. So I'm agree with Levette totally.
Okay. All right, Coach Miller, what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I totally agree as well. Like these two other distinguished gentlemen just mentioned, I think, there's consequences for inappropriate behavior. And my feelings can get in the way of my performance. And so there's a job to be done. I have a responsibility, and I can't get in my feelings. And once again, this isn't a blanket reality for everybody. Deacon Dan mentioned early on, the bad apples. When someone walks up and EMT pulls up and the police officer is a friend, so what's going on over here, man? This little joker, and the EMT then takes on the behavior or the anger, the attitude, the feelings of the officer who just told him what was up. They say, these little young bucks, what's going on? You know what? Let me call my mama. I got this, and let me text. And the person is over there needing assistance. You now pull back, and you're no longer driven because you just heard possibly this person inappropriate behavior is this is not called for, and so there should be definitely consequences and penalties for that.
I agree. Like you said, you have a job to uphold, and you took an oath. Even with the EMT, you take an oath when you, because I was an EMT as well. I did that, for a little while I was in the military, and that's something that's especially wartime or whatever. Somebody go down, no matter what the deal is, you got to do what you need to do to get them back to where they need to be, to make sure that they straight, and that applies to even out here in the streets. No matter what these people are doing out here in the streets, when you're called to that scene, your job is to make sure that you try to keep them afloat and get them where they need to be and get transported to the hospital, whether it's CPR, no matter what it is. That's something that should have been done. And it could have made a big difference in that person's life, because if you did not apply, what you were supposed to apply to them, that could only add to the reason why, they pass away or they die or whatever. So, of course, I think they should have, charges be brought against them as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next question. And the next question is DWB or driving while black a myth or a fact? Coach Miller, what you think about that DWB?
It's all depending on which part of the country you are. which part of the country, which part of the state, which part of the state. That's real. That's real. Yeah. But I think it's changing gradually. I think it's changing again, but there are still some areas that are just outright racist. Racism is everywhere, Racism is everywhere. Every country has racism. Okay, so this is not just an American issue. We highlighted a lot from the America's standpoint, and then when we go to certain parts of the country, we label the behavior, because some people, once again, anybody different than me sometimes, or different than you, if you haven't been trained, taught, exposed to embrace different, you could move towards being a racist, and starting to have inappropriate behavior. So when it comes to driving while black, that's real in a lot of instances. I've been pulled over. Guys say, "Hey man, you didn't use your signal." I was like, "Yeah, I know. Okay, well, all right, man. Okay, what do you need? Driver's license, insurance?" I know I put on my signal. I know I did. But
what can you do?
It is what it is.
Right. That's exactly right. Okay, Deacon Smith, what you got to say about this?
No, it's not a myth. It's a fact. The only reason why I say it's a fact, it depends on what area you're in.
Yeah.
And like here in Jacksonville, we're broken up in zones.
Yeah.
If I'm in zone 6, no, there's no problem.
Yeah.
If I'm in 5, yeah. There's a problem. I'm gonna be driving while you got these black, you driving, and there's a problem because this is a high crime area. So you already got one thing against you. Yeah. And that's why, that's one of the things that I look at it that way. And more than often, I have seen them do this because I always get stereotyping. If you, because you're black, like Ricardo said, he had them 24-inch rims. But now, then I look at it now, it's changing because you got a lot of whites got 24-inch rims now. Yeah. You see? So stereotyping these vehicles, it's sort of like fading away a little bit. Yeah, but for us driving black, that was the problem. It depends on what area you're in. And I agree with that. It's one area.
Okay. All right. Elder Levette, DWB. What you think?
Black is definitely a fact. It's definitely a fact. I think anything that's a myth means that it doesn't exist. So I would definitely say that it is a fact. But I also agree with these two gentlemen that, it is changing. It's changing because culture is changing. The fast that we have in today's and this generation are very universal across all races now. And so, hey, like Deacon Dan said, you stop the guy with the big rims now and the gold rims, with the hydraulics. He can be black, he can be white, he can be Spanish, he can be, he can be Jamaican, he can be Bahamian, he can be, it's a lot of, he can be anything. So now, I think that forces some way, in some regards, that forces some of the officers to not make those profiles, make those profiling. So yeah, I think it's a fact, but I think it is changing. So, and hopefully it'll change for the better.
Okay. Well, I know, back in the day, if you had a nice car and you were young and you were black, you was getting followed no matter what. Because they figured that, okay, what is this young black man doing with a nice expensive car, or something like that? And does that go on today? Is that still going on? Yeah, it's still going on because a lot of these kids nowadays, people they out there stealing cars, they're doing things like that. But as far as driving while black, I know it's not a myth, and I know it's still going on. I live in a mostly Caucasian area. And every time I'm driving past, and this is no lie, every time I'm driving past and I look on the side of the road, and I know y'all do it too. When you drive past, you see a police pull somebody, you glance over just to see, who's in that car that they're pulling over.
Yeah.
I do that all the time, and it's normally us where I live. So I know that is a profiling that's still going on, up here in this area. And I don't want to say where it's at because someone may be looking and they may pull me over the next time they see me. So I'm not going to say where I'm at, but it's not a myth. And like you said, it is slowly but surely changing. And I just hope, it just get better, for us, for everybody. So I'm going to go on to the next question. And what are some of your aspects of a weak man? And I'm going to start off with you, Deacon Dan.
Well, his attitude. If he got a poor attitude, they're going to be a weakness against him. He's not going to be able to handle a lot of situations. If you get pulled over, why are you stopping me? You see, so you don't got the wrong attitude.
Yeah.
And that's why I say is you're weak right there at that point. If you vice versa, when you got a strong attitude, you pulling over, hey, pull over, yes sir. Yeah. Why one thing I always tell a person, don't say why you pull me over. Let the officer tell you why he pulled you over. And then you can rebuttal that, okay, well, no, sir, I wasn't doing that. But now being, if you're gonna be weak, you got that, you got to have the right attitude, mindset. Like I said, we go back to this mindset and have the right mindset and your upbringing. If you hadn't had a great upbringing, a powerful upbringing, I would say you're gonna be minus a few things. You hadn't sit down and talk with somebody about situations that you're dealing with. So that's one of the things that lack of I'm gonna say even education make you weak. Some guys feel like, oh man, I ain't gotta have this education. Yes, you do. Strengthen you, strengthen your mindset. Be great.
Okay. All right. All right, Elder Levette.
I said one that lacking self control. You lack self control as a man. I think your strength is in your ability to control yourself when you're faced with whatever type of opposition, whatever type of issue that come your way. If you can practice self control, that's why the Bible was clear in telling us to do that. That if we can practice self control, because once you lose it, it's like anything. See, let me give you an example. If you lose your self-control and you in that situation like Mr. Nichols in, and you lose self-control, you basically almost giving that officer a reason to act out of character or whatever they may do. Because you didn't practice self-control. But if you practice self-control and they do that, then hey, that's a whole nother thing. But if you practice self-control, it'll get you out of a lot of situations that you find yourself in. And I mean, and that's just in general in life.
Okay. All right, Coach Miller.
For me, I would say, and I love both of you guys respond, but I'll add to that because I was about to say self-discipline, but since you give self-control so close to self-discipline, I'm gonna go another way. Okay,
go get it.
I really was gonna dive into similar point what you just said, but I'm gonna go where I think a weak man is a man who has not learned how to guard his heart. Has not learned how to guard your heart, and it's not learning how to guard your heart will allow your feelings to overtake you, and even your past hurt will affect your response in any given moment. But your ability to guard your heart will allow you not to heart and feelings is the same. I'm using them interchangeably. This is where I'm not going to take offense to what you just said. I'm not. No. And the last 3 officers who pulled me over the last month, I'm going to guard my heart. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. The scripture says, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are just. I'm going to believe you guys are having a hard time. I'm going to pray for you guys because the last 3 of you guys who pulled me over were very harsh, and a number of ways how you dealt with me was unnecessary. But I'm going to, in this situation, I'm going to be the bigger person. The person who's able to guard their heart is the bigger person. And in every situation when the guarding of the heart is needed, it is a very higher level living. When you're dealing with someone doing you wrong, the Bible says, guard your heart with all diligence. Oh my goodness. Because out of it, the issues of life, I'm talking about, and whenever your heart is affected, your trigger factors are attached to the damage that's been attached. Your triggers, I believe, are oftentimes attached to where your heart is being affected.
That's right.
And so I think strength comes from your ability to guard your heart and be able to look at somebody acting the fool, be it a police officer, be it a teacher, be it anybody is in authority. You think, okay, and I'm not taking what you are doing personal because it's not about me. If somebody says, if I don't respond to you, then everything now that you're doing is on you. And so I'm choosing not to take what you're dealing with. So guard your heart, I think, is a sign of strength for a man.
Okay. Self-discipline, guard your heart, being knowledgeable, being educated are all things that will make you strong. And those are the things that if you're lacking, you probably most likely will be weak. And I would say, as far as I'm concerned, don't give them a reason to do the bad things that they do. And a lot of times, the younger, I'm not even going to just say younger generation, men in general, a lot of times it really depends on how they come off to an officer. I know, just like Coach Miller said, I got pulled over and I complied and I was nice, smiling in the whole 9 yards. And I know that I didn't do what they said I did, but by me having that self-control, that self-discipline, they went on and gave me a warning and just let me go or whatever. Although I know I shouldn't have got anything, the point was nothing escalated. No one got hurt. I went on about my business and he went on about his. And that's what you should do whenever you have an encounter, with law enforcement. Just comply, do what they ask you to do, and just make sure, nothing gets out of sorts where there's a heated argument, because next thing you know, you're on the hood of a car, bent over on the hood of the car with handcuffs behind your back. All right, so I'm gonna go to the next question. The next question is, have any of you gentlemen, ever experienced a bad outing with law enforcement? Have any of y'all experienced that? And I'm gonna go with you first, Coach Miller. Have you ever had a problem with law enforcement that just turned bad, and it was just negative?
Unfortunately, I can't. It's not unfortunately, but it's true that I don't. And it's because I figured out a couple of things very early on. Hey man, you got a gun and you got a license to carry it. Hey man, I never had a conflicting fight with authority, man. I just knew the teacher inside of the room was in charge, man. The guy in the front, he's in charge. That siren pulling me over, he's in charge right now. And so I've been pulled over and unfairly pulled over, but because of my response, I'm not going to speak to your ego, man, to cause you to come back at me with you being the authority figure at this moment. You're right. The authority figure at this moment,
Right. Okay. All right. Elder Levette, what about you? Have you ever had any kind of negative encounters with law enforcement?
I've actually only had one, and that was actually when I was in the military. I was young, heading too long, got in my car, and I was coming back on the base one night, and I was coming in, and they stopped me, and I know what he said too, just like you said, Coach Wilbon. He didn't have no reason to stop me. I didn't do what he said I was doing. He said that I was crossing the center line, and I was crossing the center line, and I was driving too slow. I was driving the speed limit because I was taught always, my platoon sergeant say, hey, you drive the speed limit and you'll be fine. Well, that didn't work out that night. They pulled me over. It was some good old, some little redneck white boys. I'm gonna just say what it was. It was some redneck white boys. But what saved the whole night, because they took me through the whole sobriety. I passed the sobriety test. I blew in the thing. Nothing. I hadn't been drinking at all. Actually, I had just came back, and I think I had went to the movies with a young lady, and and I dropped her off at home, and I was heading back to the barracks, and I hadn't had anything to drink, nothing. And so that situation could have turned bad, and I was almost about to really get offended, but I remembered to keep my cool. And so when I kept my cool, maybe minutes later, a lieutenant pulled up. It's a black female. She pulled up, and guess what? It was a girl I went to high school with. And so she pulls up, and she was like, yeah. And they was actually trying to say that I was giving them I was giving them a lot of flack about them pulling me over. I was like, yeah, in a way I was, because you pulled me over, because all I said to him was something to the effect of, okay, so you gave me a sobriety test, I passed it. You gave me a breathalyzer, I passed it. Now what are we going to do now? That's what I said to them, and they got them a little uptight. And you know, it was like, and then the guy tells me, "Put your hands on the car." Like, for what? I just now I got the upper hand, so now you want to do that. And almost the minute they did that, she pulled up in the Jeep, and it pulled up, and she came out and she said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Oh no, I know him. He always been a real nice guy in high school. I know him. I went to school with him, you know." And then they had to back off because she a lieutenant, and they just specialist or buck sergeant, whatever. So they had to back off, and so I went on, you know, and I went on, but it left a bad taste in my mouth for a while about even military police. But you know, it was a bad experience, but I'm glad it turned out good compared to what we've seen happen.
Okay. All right. Okay. Deacon Smith.
Well, I had one really encounter, and I was going down US 1, and something I had to turn around because I needed to go by my daughter's house before I go home. I'm driving a Crown Vic, it's unmarked units.
Big time.
You know, I done turn around, and the next thing I saw the police officer in his marked unit swing back around after I turn around. So I done turn down Edgewood. He comes down Edgewood. So when he get in behind me, there's another officer over on the side. He's doing this to the other officer like that. So anyway, make a long story short, I got across the intersection, and then he blue lighted me. Well, all in below, you know, my lights, I got blue lights in mine too, but they're not, you know, seen. So I turned mine on. And he come down, I thought you wanted them old young bucks driving the Crown Vics, you know, what was happening. The Crown Vics police Crown Vics were being sold to the public. And one of them young bucks. I said, do I look like I'm a young buck? I didn't know. I said, do I look like a young buck? You know. So, yeah, that's really irritating to me because he did that intentionally.
Oh yeah.
Even after I turned my blue lights on, he should have got out of his vehicle, in my opinion. Oh, I'm sorry, man. I thought you might have been one of them young guys, you know. What's it called? I said, you stereotyping. You're black. I'm black. It's a black officer.
Oh, wow.
You know?
Wow. Yeah.
So I was very well known, and he was in zone 5. I'm in zone 5. He works in zone 1. So the chief of zone 5, he's a white officer. I talked to him, I said, look, you know, I gave him the guy's name. So he said, I'll look into it then. I'll call you back. He called me back. He told me, well, the guy works in zone 1. And I told him, I said, I really don't appreciate you stopping my people. You in zone 1, you don't supposed to be stopping nobody in zone 5. So it went on like that. He said, Dan, what he got to do? He got to go back. He got to go get some training, you know, because there's the wrong attitude. He had the wrong thing, think he was a young buck, because I told him everything that he said. So this guy had to go back. The same guy, the same sergeant, moved into my neighborhood. And after standing out there in the street, he hadn't stopped. Hey man, how you doing? I said, yeah, I'm doing great. You don't remember me? That's just what I told you. You don't remember me? Yeah. I said, you pulled me over talking about I'm a young buck. And anyway, but that's the only problem I ever had when he just come off on us saying, you know, because I'm driving a Crown Vic, you know, you think I'm some young buck, you know, why you stopping me because you thinking I'm a young buck? I'm not speeding, you know, because cars in front of me, I probably couldn't go no more than 30 miles an hour. But you done followed me almost 3 miles and pulled me over. So, but that's the only one I had. And but I think by doing what I did, I didn't disrespect him, but I think I was contributing to get him some help, which he needed it.
Yeah,
which he really needed it.
Well, let me ask you something though, Deacon Dan. Do you actually really feel? You know, a lot of times they always say, okay, you know, once an officer has a problem or do something, they need to be disciplined, do they actually send those guys to training, or they just say that? Do they actually send them to training?
No, they actually send them. They have to, it's a class they have to attend, psychological class. They have to go and attend. It might sit in there, might be a 3-day class, might be just a 1-day class, but they have to attend their class.
Okay.
Yeah. It ain't nothing that they got to be graded on or
right.
Going back anything like that. They just attend the class and that's it.
It's just like the military when they say they have to be retrained, they send them to training and and stuff like that.
Right.
I had just one bad encounter with law enforcement, and I was kind of young. Now, I would say about maybe 26, 27 years old. And I was in the military, and I was driving to Alabama. I was actually taking my son down to Alabama, and I got pulled over in South Carolina. And when I was in South Carolina, a law enforcement officer pulled me over and said I was speeding. So, he took my license, registration, and the whole 9 yards. And, I had my son in the car with me, So, he talked to me or whatever, did whatever he had to do, check things out and said, okay, you can go ahead and go. So he let me go. And about, I want to say no more than 5 minutes later, the same cop pulled me over again and told me to get out the car. And I was like, what did I do? That's, I definitely said that. So I'm not going to say I didn't say, what did I do? I said, why are you, making me get out the car? He said, well, because you were speeding. And I was like, you just stopped me back there and you told me I was. And my thing is this. If a law enforcement officer stop you and let you go, you're not going to be that crazy enough to go ahead and start speeding again. I don't think nobody in their right mind would do that, especially being out of state, going somewhere, and you already been stopped. I know for a fact I was not speeding. This guy came, locked me up. My son was probably 5 years old. They put both of us in the police car, took us to the police station in South Carolina, left my car there, took both of us to the police station in South Carolina, and I had to call my commander and let him know what was going on, and then, they let me go. But that was the only bad encounter that I ever had. And I always had a bad taste in my mouth after that encounter, because I was an MP unit 3 times in the military. I was stationed in an MP unit. I was a arms room officer. So my thing is, they had to come to me to get their weapons. They had to come to me to clear their weapons and any kind of whatever security stuff that they had. I had all of that because I was supply and I was an arms room. And I know for a fact they're not all bad police out there. They're not, because I've been around a lot of them, during the time I was in the military. But that is the only bad, encounter that I had, with the officers. And still today, it bothered me because you put my 5-year-old son in the car with me and took me to jail. Right. So, and my son remembers that. He's the oldest, but he remembers that. So, whenever we're together and someone gets pulled over and stuff like that, it reminds him of that. So that's the only, problem that I had. But, since then, I haven't had no problem with law enforcement, officers. So I'm going to go to the next question. The next one is, did you have a crucial conversation with your sons about what to do if they're stopped by law enforcement? I'm going to start with you, Elder Levette.
Yes, absolutely. Basically, just had that same conversation, the things I learned, and I know that have always gotten me, this has kept me from being in a situation with any law enforcement officer when I got stopped. And that was one: always keep your cool, don't act out of character, and of course practice self-control. And if you do those 3 things, you should be okay. Now, they don't mean that they ain't gonna be brash and mean, but I think long as you don't trip, there are triggers.
Right.
Then I think that helps you to your advantage. They might still be a little abrasive and all of that, but I think if you practice that self-control on yourself, it'll help you. It'll help you a lot.
All right, Coach Miller, have you had that conversation with your son in reference to being stopped by law enforcement and what to do?
Yeah, I had a few conversations with him. One of the things I would have told him was, stop talking. He likes to talk, man.
Wonder where he get that from.
Yeah.
I told him, anytime you're dealing with authority and they're wanting to correct you, one of the for fast mouth guys like him and I who are quick witted with our words, that can be the thing that can get you in more trouble. And he has an answer for every comment you have, and I say that right there could get you in some trouble with an officer who's having a bad day. And so you just got to know, hey man, stop talking. Another thing is, I tell them straight up, just follow the instructions that are reasonable and fair, and just keep your hands where it can be seen. There's no need to lie. If you do something stupid, know that the consequences of the situation is going to lean towards unfavorable elements for you. Okay? Follow the instructions, man. Hey, keep your hands on the wheel, please. Yep. Then don't move your hands off the wheel, buddy. Right? But my phone was ringing. Let your phone ring.
Let it ring.
Okay?
Right.
Right. All right. And I just said, hey, respect authority. Police officer is an authority figure. Respect authority. Is he right in the moment? He could be wrong. There's a way to address their wrong. That moment is not the time. Okay? There's a moment to address their wrong. Respect authority. That moment is not the time. And so we can get back to addressing their wrong, but let's get out of this situation in the moment first.
That's right. Okay. All right. Excellent point there. How about you, Deacon Dan?
My situations was a little different because when I was started law enforcement, my kids were young. Well, some of them weren't even born. But when the opportunity they be riding with me, they'll see somebody get pulled over. They'll hear things on my radio, and I tell them, I say, situation like that, this is how you act. I always tell them that. And like I said, Ricardo, you said police authority figure. You used to be. It used to be authority figure. Now, that's what I got to tell. I got two of them that follow my footsteps. Two of them went in law enforcement. Yeah. Well, one of them retired now, and the baby boy, he's still in it. And he gets whatever. Every time the opportunity I get, I talk to him about some of his cases or whatever, how he handled different situations. And so that's what I'm saying. Yes, it's good to talk to him, tell him not to, or how to do this, or what was wrong with this. Because I've pulled over with my son in the car and check with officers, make sure he's okay. Because it looked like somebody was giving him a hard time, and I just pulled over. Are you okay? And it was a white officer at a black residence. And when I pulled over and stopped, asked him, was he okay? Then this black person, I guess what you call suspect, looked at me, and his whole attitude, his attitude changed. So that white officer told me, he said, man, I appreciate you. Yeah. So there's a code we use to ask him what's called in. And he said, I'm good now. Because the guy went here and did what he was told to do. Because of, I don't want to say, I'm going to say because of my presence. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to get out of my vehicle. All I had to do was look at it. So, yeah. So that's what, I have encountered and just talk to them. Just tell them this is what they do, this is what not to do. So yes.
Okay, I agree with all three of you distinguished gentlemen because, I mean, it's hard out here. A lot of times, I got three boys, and a lot of times when they go out, I'm scared for them. I'm still scared for them. If they're not home at a certain time, I'm still worrying about them. And they grown. I have a 36-year-old and a 26-year-old. And when they go out late at night and stuff like that, 36-year-old, he don't live with me. He's doing his own thing. But I still worry about him. But the 26-year-old, whenever he goes out, he's not a hothead. He's not a bad kid. He doesn't hang out and stuff like that. But after a certain time of night, and I don't hear from him, I worry. And it's because of all the stuff that's going on, today, that makes me, worry. And we had talks, and I talked with all, and I have a 16-year-old. I talked to all three of them in reference to, what to do when they, being confronted by law enforcement. And they know they don't have that problem, and I'm just hoping and I'm praying that, it stay like that and they don't have that, encounter, like a lot of these other, people have had, with law enforcement. So I just keep praying to God that, they stay safe and things just get better, from here on out, when it comes to them dealing, with law enforcement. What will it take to change? What will it take to change? I know that's a broad question, and you could probably talk about that for hours and hours.
Mm-hmm.
What will it take to change? Well, we're going to try to narrow it down. So I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Deacon Dan. What will it take to change?
In my opinion, what it takes to change is a more thorough interview before the position is offered to them, before they're sent to training. A more thorough interview. I mean, just because you're trying to recruit, you need 45, 50 officers, you're trying to recruit them, there's some things that you're going to miss trying to get them through fast. So my thing is a thorough interview with them. They do a thorough background check, but I mean, the interview is something that they really need to push a little bit more, I think.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, Elder Levette, what will it take to change?
Definitely one word we don't use a couple times a night, mindset on both sides of the coin, whether it's the officer or it's the suspect or whatever, the person pulled over or anything like that. It's just going to take a mindset change in how you handle the situation. And the other thing I would say is to kind of go with what Deacon Dan said, I think there needs to be now some type of mental wellness training. I mean, there needs to be, officers need to be able to identify when there's something mental going on. And and mental don't mean that it's always just mental, but if someone that's on some drugs, because these kids experiment with so many type of drugs, pills, alcohol, and they mix all this stuff up. And so I think the officers have to be trained in how, because those substances cause what we call altered mental status, altered mental status. And when they have an altered mental status, they're going to react differently. So I think officers have to be trained in how to recognize that so that they can make better conscious choices and decisions. And now they turn into more of a person, let me help them. They need help. They don't, I know that, they committed a crime, but right now they're a person. They're a human being. So they need help. Let me get them the help they need. And then we'll deal with all of the legal aspects of things later. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I think change is just mindset and mental wellness training.
Okay. All right, Coach Miller, go ahead and take us home with that question. What will it change?
Yeah, I would say training for quality control. Training for quality control. It's a lot connected to what Deacon Dan says, and then obviously training addresses mindset. And then quality control. I put quality control on there because one, you're gonna always have some bad apples. You always have some bad apples. But training will improve people's behavior. Quality control will get rid of bad apples.
Right. Right.
Yeah, quality control will identify bad apples faster. So it's not all a matter of only training. You have to actually have quality control factors, and which quality control at its best have to have moments where you test to see if people are doing it right. And so Deacon Dan mentioned a little bit early on having some undercover people that actually goes to see, even in the early training stage and later on. You have, they got these undercover bosses. They should have undercover lieutenants and undercover the switching cross departments and say, let's and the goal is not to make policing difficult. The goal is to have the proper understanding by all of the potential officers or all of the officers out there on the streets.
Okay. Training and quality control. That's excellent points, when it comes to trying to make change with what's going on in this world. And I mean, it's very hard. It's sad about what's going on. And we're seeing it right before our eyes, for the people that's, back in the day, you may heard about it and may not have seen it, but now it's coming to light. It's on YouTube, it's on Twitter, it's everywhere. You're seeing this, people are recording this. And what I want to say is, just do the right thing. Try not to agitate and aggravate, the situation to make it escalate to a point where, it's going to be violence, So what these three distinguished gentlemen had just told you and everything that we spoke about today, please, listen to that, take heed to that, talk to your sons and your daughters or whoever you need to talk to in reference to what's going on. And it could potentially and definitely, help impact their lives and save lives as, we move forward and, and what's going on in this world, So I just want to say, closing thoughts coming up. And I'm going to start with you first, Deacon Dan. Any closing thoughts?
Well, my closing thought is, for one, if we got any officers listening, don't forget your training. Don't forget what two forces we can use: physical and deadly. Physical to affect the rest, deadly if there's a threat, to prevent the threat. So if you remember that, you shouldn't go beyond that. And I love what's going on with these body cameras. Like I was talking to, of course, Deborah, my wife, like that Tyree Nicholas. When I saw some of the video from the cam, I just had to step back because I never was trained that way. I never would do a person that way. So I had to step back. I don't know. Like I told her, I don't know what these guys on. But yes, just, respect yourself and make sure that the other person respects you too. So you got to have that respect for one another. Officer is he's not above the law. He's there to enforce the law, keep you safe. But in turn, when he's causing death, something is wrong. That's it.
Okay. All right, Elder Levette, any closing thoughts?
I would say primarily for police departments. I think whenever you get those complaints on officers, you really have to investigate and thoroughly. And it can't be no bias, it can't be no bias based off of color, sex, origin, anything. The departments have to investigate these claims because what we often find out every time that there's been this police brutality that's been magnetized in the media, every time they go and they start investigating the officer, they find they done had several different complaints. All of this stuff is in their file, but nothing really wasn't done other than they received a write-up. Well, a write-up is good, but it don't send a message. I think you gotta really take it seriously and actually take the appropriate action because every department, they have laws. I mean, they have rules, regulations that they got to follow. If they break those rules, then they got to face the consequences and not just get a slap on the wrist by a write-up. And I think once that happened, that's going to promote what we talked about. That's going to help promote some of that change. And then, retraining, reinforcement and training. So that's my closing thoughts.
Okay. All right, Coach Miller, your closing thoughts on the topic today?
Yeah, I think law enforcement, like other professions, are dealing with difficult of humanity. Today, society is not easy to please. Okay, but law enforcement is a difficult job to have. There's a book called Talking, and I tell a lot of my clients, I say you have to train yourself in order to get the best out of life. You have to train yourself like a Navy SEAL. you have to train yourself like a Marine. And somebody said to me the other day, they said, why do you keep saying like a Navy SEAL and like a Marine? I said, because you have to sometimes know how to go into dangerous territory and keep your demeanor, how to be in a swamp. And you don't like snakes, but really to get across to safety at the night, you got to go through this water. You got to go through these bad and horrible and difficult situations. And law enforcement have to sometimes, you got a bad marriage, you got a kid on drugs, you didn't sleep last night because your child was sick. And the first call you go on, somebody call your mama name. And you got to be like a Navy SEAL and understand your feelings cannot govern your performance today. You have to know how to be bigger than your feelings. Your training has to have the highest level of attention in the most difficult of situations. And that's what I think about when I think about a Navy SEAL and a Marine. Their training has the highest level of attention in difficult situations. Their feelings don't govern them in difficult situations. Their training does. And I think for law enforcement, I would say, like Deacon Dan mentioned, lean on the training. And then for parents who with sons, train your boys not to let their feelings govern them as well. Let the training govern them. So in my son's case, shut up. And let's address this later, because he could be wrong, but you could make yourself wrong. And when both wrongs have to be looked at, chances are you will be the one left to be wrong.
Excellent. My closing thought is that everything that you guys have said it applies, it makes sense, and this is something that if you're watching, please take heed to this, because I mean, for me, I just want to say, if you are law enforcement and you are watching, we all are human. All of us are human, and in the words of the late Rodney King, why can't we all just get along? Why can't we all just get along? Let's try to do the right thing. I know that's asking a whole lot for a whole lot of people out there, but the thing is, we all are humans, and you're the law, and like Deacon Dan said, you're supposed to enforce it. No one is above the law, but treat people like you want to be treated. So if you're in that job, and we're trusting you to uphold the law, then by all means do that, and nothing more than that. No one should have to die. No one should have to be hurt. We have people out there that maybe need to be locked up, but they don't have to die. They don't have to meet their maker before they even go before a judge. So that's how I feel about it. And that's my final closing thought on that. So what I want to say now is I thank Coach Smith for the opportunity, to host this segment today. I appreciate everything that she's doing. Build Your Best Life is a great platform, and conversation with the guys is something I look forward to, every second Saturday of the month. And like I said, I really appreciate everything that she's doing. And I hope we get more, people subscribing to her channel. We get more feedback, and make sure you go out and buy her book, Build Your Best Life. Hold it up for Coach. There it is, right there. And I know Coach Ricardo got one too, because he got all those books back there. So I'm sure hers is up there on the mantle, as well as Elder Levesque. But make sure you do that. And we look forward to seeing all of you again, in March on the second Saturday. And, tell your friends, tell everybody about this, because this is something that's very, very important, is relevant. And you can get a whole lot of great information, out of, listening to these three wonderful, distinguished young men that's up here on this screen. And I just want to say, for everybody that's watching, have a beautiful and blessed day. Take care of yourself. Stay safe. And we will see you again the second Saturday in March. God bless and take care.
God bless.
God bless. Great morning.